Beat It doesn't feel addictive by accident. Every second is designed to stop your brain from drifting, right down to the way the song enters, shifts, and never lets you settle. And the most important decision behind it wasn't planned months in advance. It happened in a studio at the last moment. Once you hear how it was built, you'll never listen to it the same way again. By late 1982, Thriller was already shaping up to be something massive, but Michael Jackson wasn't satisfied. Inside Westlake Recording Studios in Los Angeles, he had a very specific problem he wanted to solve. Rock radio and pop radio were still living in separate worlds, and Michael wanted one song that could walk straight through both doors without asking permission. Beat It started with Michael alone, writing the track himself. Unlike many Thriller cuts, this wasn't built from outside demos or committee decisions. The core idea, lyrics, melody, and attitude came directly from him. The message was simple on the surface, walk away from violence, but the delivery had to feel dangerous enough that people would actually listen. That's where Quincy comes in. As producer, Quincy immediately recognized what Michael was aiming for, but he also knew it was risky. A pop artist leaning this hard into rock energy could easily sound forced or gimmicky. Instead of softening it, Quincy pushed the idea further. The rule became clear early in the sessions. If they were going to do rock, it had to be real. Recording began during the main Thriller sessions in 1982, with Michael also credited as co-producer. The rhythm track was tight, aggressive, and fast-moving. No long intro, no easing the listener in. That was intentional. Michael wanted the song to feel like it was already in motion when you arrived, as if you jumped into the middle of something unfolding. Even the title mattered. Beat It wasn't just a phrase, it was a command. Short, confrontational, impossible to ignore. By the time the vocals were locked in, the song already felt different from anything else on Thriller, but it was still missing the element that would turn it from a great record into a cultural weapon. And that missing piece would arrive in the most unexpected way. What makes Beat It dangerous isn't just how it sounds, it's how little space it gives your brain to escape. From a technical standpoint, the song is built to move fast and stay fast. The tempo sits around 138 beats per minute, which is aggressive for a mainstream pop single in 1983, especially one aimed at radio dominance. There's no warm-up. The track drops you straight into motion. The opening synth line is doing more work than most people realize. It isn't melodic in a traditional sense, it's percussive, almost like a signal. Those first few notes act as an audio fingerprint. Within seconds, the listener already knows exactly what song they're hearing, which is critical for instant recognition on radio and decades later on streaming playlists. Underneath that, the rhythm section stays locked and relentless. The drums don't wander, the groove doesn't loosen. Instead, the track keeps pushing forward, creating a subtle sense of urgency. Psychologically, this matters. Songs that feel like they're going somewhere are harder to abandon mid-listen, and Michael was extremely aware of that effect. Vocally, Michael avoids long, drawn-out phrases. His delivery is sharp, clipped, and rhythmic, almost conversational but urgent. Lines land quickly, then move on before you have time to process them fully. That constant turnover of information keeps attention high without overwhelming the listener. Structurally, Beat It also avoids repetition traps. While the chorus is memorable, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Instead, the song keeps introducing new textures, backing vocals here, rhythmic accents there, so your ear stays curious even when the hook returns. By the time the track reaches the midpoint, the listener is already locked in, and that's when the song makes its boldest move, one that wasn't just about energy, but about credibility, because what happens next doesn't just raise the intensity, it changes the entire identity of the record. As Beat It was taking shape in Los Angeles in early 1982, Quincy Jones knew the track still had a problem. It sounded aggressive, but to truly cross into rock territory, it needed authenticity, something no amount of studio polish could fake. The solution came down to one risky idea: bring in a real rock guitarist and let him do whatever he wanted. That guitarist was Eddie Van Halen, already a legend by the early 80s. At the time, Eddie was in the middle of Van Halen's own recording commitments, and the idea of appearing on a Michael Jackson song wasn't exactly standard industry practice. According to multiple accounts, Eddie initially thought the call was a prank. It wasn't. Eddie arrived at the studio and recorded the solo for free in a single session. There were no contracts, no label negotiations, and no attempt to rein him in. Quincy Jones gave him one instruction: just go for it. Eddie took that literally. He rewrote the harmonic rules of the song for about 30 seconds, injecting raw distortion, dive bombs, and melodic chaos into an otherwise tightly controlled pop record. The result was so explosive that it created a new problem. The original rhythm guitar and drum parts no longer sat correctly underneath the solo. Years later, Steve Lukather of Toto, one of the session musicians on Thriller, revealed that parts of the track had to be re-recorded to support Eddie's performance and make the transition feel seamless. There's also a lesser-known detail that keeps fueling debate today. Eddie reportedly damaged a studio speaker while tracking the solo due to the sheer volume and intensity of his amp. Whether myth or fact, the story stuck, because it perfectly matches how that solo feels. When the final mix was completed, Beat It was no longer just a pop song borrowing rock aesthetics. It had rock credibility baked into its DNA. And that single decision would ripple far beyond the record itself, because the next step turned the song into a visual statement the world couldn't ignore. By early 1983, Beat It was already dominating radio, but Michael Jackson knew sound alone wouldn't finish the job. MTV was still new, but its influence was growing fast, and most rock-leaning visuals followed the same formula: bands, guitars, attitude. Michael wanted something different. He wanted a story that matched the song's tension without glorifying it. The video was directed by Bob Giraldi, a commercial filmmaker, not a traditional music video director. That choice mattered. Giraldi approached the project like a short film, not a performance clip. Filming took place in Los Angeles, specifically on Skid Row, a location chosen for its raw, confrontational atmosphere. This wasn't a set dressed to look dangerous, it already was. Michael pushed for realism. Instead of using only professional dancers, actual gang members were cast alongside trained performers. The risk was real enough that extra security was required during filming. The goal wasn't shock value, it was credibility. The tension had to feel lived in, not staged. Choreography was handled by Michael Peters, with Michael himself deeply involved in shaping the movement. The fighting is never shown directly. Instead, conflict transforms into synchronized motion, redirecting aggression into control. That visual choice mirrored the song's message. Strength isn't about domination, it's about restraint. The video premiered on MTV on March 31, 1983, and the impact was immediate. Beat It didn't just play between rock videos, it belonged there. For many viewers, it blurred the line between pop and rock for the first time, visually reinforcing what the song had already done sonically. More importantly, the video gave the track replay value beyond radio. People didn't just want to hear Beat It, they wanted to see it again. That repeat viewing turned the song into an event, not just a hit. And once visuals, radio, and credibility aligned, the numbers didn't just rise, they exploded. Once Beat It had radio, MTV, and cultural momentum moving in the same direction, its rise stopped looking normal. In the United States, the song reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1983, holding the top spot for 3 consecutive weeks. At the same time, it dominated genre charts, crossing boundaries that were still rigid at the time, especially between pop and rock audiences. Internationally, the impact was just as clear. In the United Kingdom, Beat It peaked at #3 on the official singles chart, first entering the chart in April 1983. Across Europe, the song landed in the top 10 in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, confirming that this wasn't a US-only phenomenon. It translated everywhere. But the real industry validation came the following year. On February 28, 1984, at the 26th Annual Grammy Awards held in Los Angeles, Beat It won Record of the Year. That award mattered. It wasn't about genre or popularity, it was about overall impact, production, and execution. For a song with a rock guitar solo at its core, written by a pop artist, that win sent a message the industry couldn't ignore. The success of Beat It also directly fueled Thriller's historic run. The album would go on to become the best-selling album of all time, and this track was a major reason it stayed on top for so long. Each single didn't replace the previous one, it stacked on top of it, keeping the album alive month after month. By the time the dust settled, Beat It wasn't just a hit single, it had become proof that pop music could absorb rock, visuals, and social messaging without losing mass appeal, and that blueprint didn't fade, it quietly became the standard. Decades later, those numbers still matter because they explain why the song didn't age out, it aged forward, and the data from today makes that impossible to ignore. Most hit songs fade quietly. Beat It never did. It just migrated. As radio gave way to digital platforms, the track didn't lose relevance, it proved it. Today, more than 4 decades after its release, Beat It sits at over 1.6 billion streams on Spotify, pulling in roughly 800,000 to 900,000 plays every single day. That isn't passive nostalgia, that's active choice, repeated daily by listeners who weren't even alive in 1983. On YouTube, the official music video, now upgraded to 4K, has passed 1.2 billion views, still averaging hundreds of thousands of views per day. What's striking is where those views come from. Analytics breakdowns shared by music data sites show strong engagement from younger demographics, meaning the song isn't just being revisited, it's being discovered. Part of that longevity comes from how often Beat It re-enters the cultural conversation. It's referenced in films, commercials, sports arenas, video games, and social media trends. The guitar solo alone is constantly ranked among the greatest of all time, pulling rock fans back into a song they might otherwise dismiss as pop. At the same time, producers and musicians continue breaking it down on YouTube, TikTok, and podcasts, keeping the record alive through analysis rather than hype. There's also a quieter factor: algorithm compatibility. Beat It has instant recognition, fast engagement, and no dead air. All traits that modern platforms reward. Skip rates stay low, completion rates stay high. That's not luck, it's design catching up with technology that didn't exist when the song was made. And every time a new interview resurfaces, whether it's Quincy Jones, Steve Lukather, or archived comments from Eddie Van Halen, the story resets. New angles emerge, old myths get challenged, the song becomes news again. Which leads to the real reason Beat It never aged out. It wasn't built for a moment, it was built for attention. And attention is the one currency that never goes out of style. What keeps Beat It alive isn't just the song, it's the arguments around it. Decades later, people are still debating the details. How much Eddie Van Halen really changed the track, which parts were reworked after the solo, and how close the song came to sounding completely different. Every few years, a new interview clip or quote resurfaces, and the conversation starts all over again. Steve Lukather has pushed back on simplified versions of the story, explaining that once Eddie's solo was locked in, the band had to reshape the foundation underneath it. That matters because it reveals something most casual listeners miss. The solo didn't just decorate the song, it forced the song to evolve. Instead of cutting it down to fit pop rules, Michael and Quincy rebuilt around it. That choice is why the track still feels alive instead of dated. There's also the long-running misconception that Beat It was a rock song first and a pop song second. In reality, it's the opposite. The brilliance is that the rock element is used as contrast, not control. It appears, detonates, and disappears before it can exhaust itself. That restraint is why the song never collapses under its own intensity. And that's the real lesson hiding in plain sight. Beat It isn't addictive because it's loud, flashy, or iconic. It's addictive because it respects the listener's attention. It arrives fast, it keeps moving, it changes just often enough to stay interesting, and it leaves before you're ready for it to end. That's why people still argue about it. That's why it still charts on modern platforms. And that's why, even after 40 years, pressing play on Beat It still feels like the right decision every single time. When you strip away the legend, the awards, and the nostalgia, what's left is something far more uncomfortable for modern music. Beat It solved the attention problem before attention became scarce. Long before algorithms, skip buttons, and retention graphs, this song was already optimized for how people actually listen. Michael Jackson didn't rely on excess. There's no wasted intro, no indulgent breakdown, no moment where the energy drops and asks for patience. Every section earns its place, and every transition pulls you forward instead of resetting your focus. That's why the song still feels modern. It behaves the way today's platforms reward, even though it was built in an era that didn't require it. The real blueprint isn't the guitar solo or the video budget, it's restraint. Beat It knows exactly when to escalate and exactly when to get out. It gives you intensity in short bursts, contrast without confusion, and resolution without dragging the moment out. That balance is rare, and it's why so many songs since have tried to copy the surface without understanding the structure underneath. That's also why the track refuses to age into a classic-only lane. New listeners don't experience it as an old song. They experience it as something that moves, something that doesn't ask for context, something that doesn't need explanation to work. And that's the quiet truth behind its addiction. Beat It doesn't survive because it was big, it survives because it was precise. It respects attention, controls momentum, and leaves before you're done with it. Which is why, decades later, the most dangerous thing about Beat It isn't how loud it is or how iconic it sounds. It's how effortlessly it still wins.